please, skylab 3, just jump on in. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Fred was a student in my math class when I taught at the Air Force Academy. I wrote a book called Space Trivia back in about '93, and one of the pages was devoted to skylab first. After I got to 75, I quit because we had really made inroads. In fact, it was the first time that we ever provided conversations between the crews in space and their families, because we were going to be up there for so long. They thought it would be practical and also good psychology to keep the people tied together. So what we did at that time, the only time we could get a comm link from the spacecraft down to the Earth was when we went over a ground station. Now that was really ancient science, but it still worked. So what we did, we rotated on a 3-day basis, so every day one of us would talk to our families, and it was very informative. We found out what the kids were doing wrong. Also, I was talking to my wife one day, and Helen said, "You got a strange letter from a lady over at the Johnson Space Center." And I said, "Well, what did it say?" She says, "They're canceling your government employees' life insurance policy." I said, "Well, maybe they know something I don't know." I'd gone, before the flight, I'd gone to this bureaucrat. And I said, "I'd like to pay up my insurance policy for 3 months because I'm going up in space." And she said, "Oh, you don't need to do that. Yeah, we'll forgive you the fees, and then you can pay us up when you get back." Well, don't trust the bureaucrat. Anyway, I also got to talk to my daughter. She was at the University of Texas. It was December of 1973, and so she was on Christmas break. So Helen said, "Go ahead and talk to your dad. You got 6 minutes." We had about 6 to 8 minutes, maybe sometimes 9, depends on the ground station you're at and all that, and the angle. But anyway, that was good. So we enjoyed that. But I was talking to my daughter. She said, "Well, what can you see?" And I said, "Not a darn thing. It's dark." And she said, "Well, what does it look like otherwise?" I said, "Hey, wait a minute. Sun's getting ready to rise." Now, this is really a dynamic situation in space. So, because you can see it just get lighter, a little bit lighter, a little bit lighter, and then all of a sudden you can see the sun pop up. Well, this takes a matter of minutes. And so I was watching this, and I was telling her I'm almost using it up all the time, and I'm telling her how this golden bloom spreads at the top of the golden crest and spread out, the spread that is generated by the sun when it just first pops up above the horizon. And she said, my monologue was not getting through to her. And she said, "Why don't you take some pictures?" And I said, "That's a good idea." So I did. I took some pictures of the sunrise, and one of them is going to be featured in our Astronaut Scholarship Foundation annual auction this particular November. My wife and I agreed that we would donate this because I'm running out of artifacts. I mean, I've been donating stuff to the...
You forgot you are.
Anyway, so that's not a problem. I even donated some underwear in it. So that's why it's called desperation. Anyway, let's see. Oh, but I had this one page that said, and in my trivia book, it had all of these firsts. I'll just give you a few of them. Very, very few. First toilet worked. That's all we needed. The first shower, we could only take a shower once a week, whether we needed it or not. We had a private sleep compartment, a real luxury. When the Russians looked at this, the mock-up of the International Space Station, they said, it'll never work. You cannot put a person off by themselves and isolate them. They'll go crazy. Well, perhaps this is evidence enough, but anyway, we survived. The last thing that happened that took us was very exciting. We were getting ready to enter, and so we did our deorbit burn. Jerry turned into space about 45 degrees to our line of flight, and we jettisoned the service module, and that was all of our little engines for attitude control. So we had activated the ones on the command module. And so everything was going nice and dandy, so the service module flew away, and then Jerry was going to move the hand controller to move to entry attitude. Now, this is very important, because if you're in an entry attitude, it's going to get real hot on the inside. And so Ed and I were watching this whole thing unfold, and so we looked over, and so Jerry was moving the hand controller to maneuver the entry attitude, and nothing was happening. We should be hearing thrusters firing, and pop, 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 and nothing happened. And both Ed and I both said, "Go direct, Jerry, go direct." That's a special emergency way of firing some thrusters to get you, and it worked. Actually, he had already started firing direct, but because he obviously, we all knew something was wrong. Anyway, it worked great. We got the entry attitude turned on the autopilot, and the entry was great. So the recovery was very exciting for about a half a second. And everything was fine and dandy, and as we landed, we actually were able to walk when we got out of the spacecraft, when we got out on the deck, which surprised some people. But we had been exercising regularly every day, and so we felt real good about getting back, and that was the end of a long 12-week flight in space.
Actually, we were so accurate on that landing, they had to move the carrier, so we wouldn't have been